Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer coming to you with an amazing country chair that we are going to be interviewing. You know that every month we come in with an amazing G100 Oneness and Wisdom country chair who joins us in sharing who they are, what they do, and what inspired them to actually be part of the G100 Oneness and Wisdom movement. We all know that G100 is an amazing movement that was started off by Dr. Harbin Arora Rai, and I'm very fortunate to be the global chair for the wing named G100 Oneness and Wisdom. So without further ado, let's invite our amazing guest, Miss Nuthan, to come and join us and tell us a bit about herself. Welcome, Nuthan. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Jennifer.
And just for everyone who's listening in, Nuthan Manohar is our Netherlands country chair for G100 Oneness and Wisdom. So, Nuthan, why don't you tell all of us a bit about you? Who is this amazing Nuthan Manohar?
Thank you, Jennifer. And well, who am I? That's I think one of the toughest question to always answer, but I think I'll try to do it in simple ways. I'm someone who greatly values happiness, and because of maybe life experiences and the kind of work that I've been able to do, I've been able to make a living out of that. So, in
Wonderful.
short, I work in happiness.
Good. I remember you telling me some time back that you love to work with happiness and also try to help people live in an environment that is stress free, right? In the beginning, it
I
was is a bit about
do not believe in the word
stress or
stress
something.
free. I, on the contrary, believe that stress is actually of much use if you are trying to lead a life where you're moving towards your potential. So I would never expect a world to be stress free. I mean, it's not possible, and it might actually have a negative impact. Instead, becoming resilient to stress. And if you look at humanity as such, I mean, we have this amazing resilience. We have gone through trauma as individuals, as civilization. But the fact is that we are still here and we are still growing. That means it's all about resilience. So it's about
Good.
helping groups become resilient to stress,
Hmm.
to find what motivates them, brings them happiness,
Mm.
and of course, the part which we often forget, finding rest and sleep, your leisure time, being able to have all of that.
Okay. So tell me a bit about how would you go about helping people to be resilient in times of
Okay.
stress? How do you do that?
So I have a company, Me Met Me, and since its inception, I've worked with over 30,000 people across the globe, over 80 companies, including LinkedIn, Discovery, etc. And the way we go about it is basically to identify what is actually required within a group. So if I'm not working with an individual and I'm working with a group, to understand what exactly are the challenges the group is facing, and then see what little tweaks that you can do in terms of habits, in terms of new practices, in terms of dynamics, so that you can actually have a much better quality of life. So I think maybe the starting point is to study the quality of life of a person, and that's thankfully been very well defined by WHO. And based on that, we kind of try to see how do you improve it. So when I'm working with, let's say, children who've been sexually abused, then maybe the focus might be on, say, self-esteem and building self-esteem after it's been broken.
Mhm.
Whereas when I'm working with, let's say, management institution students, it might be on preventing a burnout. Whereas when it comes to medical students, it's about teaching them the importance and the necessity to adhere to work life balance. So it depends on which is the group that I'm working with.
Yeah.
And then, what are the socio-cultural aspects of
Mm.
the areas that I'm studying, and then create an intervention and study the before and after so that it is very, very rigorous.
I just want to question something over there. Do you find that when you're dealing with a group of people, do you find that each person might be uniquely different, and thus their stress factors may be triggered due to some other situations? How would you handle something of that sort?
Absolutely. Now, the fact is that stress is biological, or our stress response is biological. So, whether you are experiencing stress out of a relationship, or maybe financial situations, or maybe socio-economic conditions, or even things like COVID, your response, your biological response is the same, or at least similar. So, helping people understand that and then identify which pattern are they kind of, exhibiting. Are they freezing? Are they fawning? Are they fighting? Are they getting into a particular mode when it comes to stress? And how do you overcome it? So it's more about teaching people the science of relaxation. But that being said, you are absolutely right. When it comes to the individual, you need to really look at, what is pulling them back.
Mm, mm,
Because many times, it's not the lack of awareness of stress. For instance, when I'm
mm,
working with doctors, it's not the lack of awareness of what is the mechanism that is working, preventing them from being happy, but instead it might be something deeper. So then in such cases, you might have to work with the individual, give them tools, even as a group, to work, a bit deeper. So
mm,
in this case, there is a lot more of self-reflection, a lot more of going deeper within. So such cases, sometimes I might even use tools like hypnosis to help go deeper, so that you get into that subconscious level.
mm,
And sometimes you might even, so the current challenge that I'm working with is, there isn't much of problems in a subconscious level, or maybe at a social level, or at a very
mhm,
external
mhm,
level, but there is still a problem. So these problems are called systemic. So we
mm,
don't know where it has come from, but it is still there. So then
mhm,
systemic problems have to be dealt with a different set of tools. So depending on the individual, you might have to use different set of tools. Depending on the organization, the culture, the problem, you might have to look at different set of tools. For instance, I mean, currently in Netherlands, when you look at burnout, you would see that it's a systemic problem, which means
mhm,
that it is not the individual, but then something that is um, a hidden dynamic that is kind of making it really difficult for someone to come out of a burnout.
mhm,
So there you might have to work with policy, you might have to work with a lot of elements than just the individual. As a stark contrast, for instance, when I'm working with many people in India, you would find that the burnout might be because of poor life habits, life
mm,
choices, or lifestyle diseases, as we call it. It could be lack of sleep, it could be lack of rest, it could be lack of exercise, poor eating habits, maybe smoking, alcoholism, etc. So then if you make those changes, you would find the person getting better. But here
mhm,
you're seeing a unique problem where people are already physically healthy, they should be
mm,
doing really well, but are not.
mhm,
So then you look at the tool differently. So it's very, very specific. And I think
mhm.
this is where brand consulting kind of, my background in brand consulting comes into play, because you need to understand who you're working on and what are their motivations, what's pulling them down, and then help build it.
Yeah,
So
because uh, to drill a little deeper, because this is a very fascinating topic and very close to my heart personally, I just wanted to check, do you find that it becomes a difficult situation when you have multiple people? For example, if you're working with a group and you have different kinds of people all responding to different kinds of situations, how would you then culminate a process or processes, for example, that will address the team dynamics? Because that is something that is so required, don't you think, in the way that we all are operating, in a way that organizations are operating. I think that is something, if you could shed some light on that, it's really a fascinating topic.
absolutely. And I think the leap once again came from the background in research and brand consulting and consumer behavior. So there we would have this problem that within 30 seconds of a commercial, I used to work on audios, within a 30 seconds of commercial, a wide demographic of people across a country should buy this particular product. So which
Mhm,
meant that you're kind of not looking at just that. You have to look at individual, of course, but you also have to be able to look at it from a group perspective. So this
mhm,
is a learning that has been very, very helpful in helping me design those interventions. So now here comes a bit of math. So for instance, once you design an intervention, you study what is the situation of the group. So within a group, you would have somebody who's already very happy, somebody who is actually pretty miserable. So, and you have a large enough sample size. So sometimes my sample size of 500, which is statistically considered pretty good when I'm working on an area like that. And then you try to see what is the shift that has happened. Let's say a 10% shift has happened in, let's say, just say self-esteem. Now, 10% shift, is it really significant? This is where you have tools like you look at standard deviation, you look at the t-value, and that is when you can mathematically prove, yes, this is possible. So most of the papers that I have published, we've had fantastic results, so much so that I can very, very mathematically confidently say that even if I put this same study on another group, similar group in another country, the results will be similar. So that's where the t-value comes into play. So that's the mathematical part of it. But when it comes to designing the intervention, I think that's where intuition comes into play, because you have so many data points coming to you. You have to pick the one that, you know, feels right. And you really have no way of knowing how well the results are till you do the t-value much later.
Yeah, because it's interesting working. Yeah, working with on one-on-one is a brilliant way of doing it. And then you're only working with one person. But when you take the dynamics to a group level, it's always very interesting to hear different perspectives of how it is done. So thank you for sharing that. It's really amazing. So I'm going to ask you another question that is going to be totally off the charts. What do you do for fun, Nuthan?
Oh. I think I try to kill myself. So I'm just back from a fantastic holiday.
Holiday.
And,
where did you go? Just out of curiosity.
So we did 3,000 kilometers driving, 130 kilometers on foot, 3 kilometers going up, lots of altitude sickness. But then at the end of it, I'm even more excited. I tried my first paragliding as well. But I'm even more excited because as years go by, you know, your body starts to show signs. And I think I'm kind of coming to that point where I need to do the things very quickly. So I think my plan is for the year is to, you know, learn mountaineering so that I can summit Mont Blanc. I was at Alps recently, and yeah, in very, very remote areas which are not very prominent in the touristy routes. But it was
at last you had a
physically
great
challenging
holiday. You had a good holiday, which is important.
Yes, yes.
And to de-stress.
So every year, twice a year, I do these kind of crazy things. So normally it's Himalayas. But now that I'm in Europe, it's the Alps. That's the largest here.
You're going to be checking out all those amazing spots to actually conquer. Okay, cool. But there's another aspect of you, which I found fascinating personally. I remember speaking to you and watching some of the work that you've done, and I love the idea that you talk about and you work with fragrances.
Yes.
Okay. Now that for me is something that is absolutely something that I don't think very many people know about. And I would like you to really share with us what that is. How did you come into it? And what do you do with this? It's so, I mean, I found it absolutely mind-blowing. So please do share with us, because I think there's so much that can be done with it and needs to be done with it. So please share with us what that is.
Thank you for bringing that up. So to be honest, I mean, to date, I have not read a book on perfumery or on aromatherapy. Of all the books I possess, there isn't a single book. I've never done a course in it. But the fact is, one day it just came to me. And it came to me in a way that I still can't explain. Many people still can't explain how does that happen, because owing to certain yogic practices, my nose started becoming very, very sensitive. So much so that I can start sensing scent in any part of the body. So when I'm smelling a scent or an aromatic compound, I don't need to know what it is, but I can say how it impacts the body. And therefore you can blend. So now, for instance, my most popular one is for a heartbreak. So when you have heartbreak,
Gee.
when you have a heartbreak,
Okay.
so when you have a heartbreak, um, something that happens to you biochemically is that few things that your body automatically produces stops getting produced, which
Yeah.
means you start having pain, aches,
Mhm.
okay, and you feel lousy. I mean, of course, you cry a lot. Now, the fact is, rose as well as chocolate and a couple of other essential oils have similar compounds or compounds that can mimic it. So, if you can blend it in the right proportions and get a person who's going through a heartbreak to smell it, the person would stop crying.
Wow, that is phenomenal. Oh, wonderful. Oh, wow.
So, so
Oh, this
this
is the way
was
that you've got to tell us more about this. This is fascinating. I mean, I find it fascinating, and I'm quite sure many people don't even know that something like this actually exists, or someone like you exists who can actually create something like that. So tell me, how many people have actually come to you with different kinds of situations, and how is it that you've been? Please share with us. I'd love to hear these examples of different. So what if someone came to you with stress, for example, um,
hmm,
um, stress related to work. Let's talk about that.
okay. So stress, of course, for instance, I mean, you can use, I mean, I think many people know this, things like lavender, etc., has an impact on reducing your cortisol levels. So
Mhm.
you can use specific oils to reduce your stress. But you can also look at the person. Now, this is where Ayurveda, the Indic wisdom, comes into play. A person, you can look at the person's body type physiologically. So, for instance, I mean, not all of us actually have like the same blood pressure. Some of us have a low BP naturally. Okay, they tend to be what we call the Vata Prakriti.
Mhm.
Some of us tend to have like a very warm body temperature.
Mhm.
Okay, they are Pitta Prakriti. Some of us have amazing skin.
Mhm.
Okay, you, all right?
Oh, please no.
Okay, so Kapha Prakriti, and you can look at
You've
the
got to say those terms again and slowly because I don't think I didn't get it. So I don't think many people
okay,
would. So
sure.
what are those words you're using in there?
So, in your Ayurvedic way of looking at a body type, the primary three body types are Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and then you have a combination of it. So, once you know which body type a person is like,
Hmm.
then you already know what oils they'll work with best.
Oh, okay.
For instance, lavender is supposed to help a person sleep also, but
Okay.
for a Vata person, peppermint is better because it
Okay.
calms them
Calm.
mentally.
Okay.
Peppermint is normally used to, get a person very excited normally.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
So you look at the body type and then kind of blend. And again, because of my training in yoga, you can also look at a person from a chakra perspective. So now
Okay.
when you say it's because of work, now from a chakra perspective, generally you can say work is affecting their Manipura chakra, or who am
Mm-hmm.
I? But it could also be the Muladhara, my ability to claim resources,
Mm-hmm.
okay, my ability to deal with uncertainties. So what is it? Or it could even be my ability to, find pleasure in what I am doing.
Mm.
So which
True.
area is it from a chakra perspective? So once you kind of understand this, and then
The
you
map.
can go even a bit deeper in terms of, especially since in Europe you have different kinds of weather, you can look
Mm.
at what's the weather, that they flourish or do well in. Then you can blend oils based on that person.
Cool.
So, and ideally, I would not stop with just the oil. I'll also do a little ritual for them because certain people, they might find it very difficult to meditate, but a certain specific meditation practice would be very helpful for them, more than a physical practice. They might find physical practice is very easy. So you have to find that,
Fine
um,
tune things and then blend. And
and
I think
then,
that so it's not only the ability to have yoga practices or Ayurvedic practices, but it's also your intuitive capacity to be able
yes,
to hone in to make the blend that is
yes,
suitable for an individual. I think that is what, because we all can learn stuff, but then
yes,
the thing that makes that different and unique is our ability to use that to enhance someone else's experience with the blends that you would possibly make.
True. And I think here being neurodiverse kind of helps because being neurodiverse, I have Asperger's, that's like being in a spectrum.
Yes, yes.
Um, so what happens is that you're very, what do you call, sensitive to sense.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so I can use it to an advantage instead of use it to a disadvantage. Second
Exactly.
is that you very, I mean, the positive part is you can work with lots of data points, which might look as intuition, but the fact is it is a lot of data points, and then be able to blend. Thankfully, it does well, and yeah, it's been a very fascinating journey.
I think it's a brilliant thing that it's a gift that you have, and if it can help many people, it's absolutely an awesome thing to do. Very good. So
Thank
now,
you.
I've always been fascinated by that aspect of you. It was like, oh wow, this is something unique and brilliant. Now, with regard to, and I'm not going to come into the G100 oneness and wisdom. I know you have been with G100 oneness and wisdom in India, okay? And then when you move to the Netherlands, you're here now as our country chair. But my question to you is, what really inspired you to be part of the oneness and wisdom really?
So to be honest, I'm not part of any other group. So even in the past, when people would try to get me into a group, I would just
Mm.
refuse. I mean, yes, lots of NGO activities which are not networking, for instance, maybe like Red Cross and things like that, but not networking groups per
Mm.
se. Primarily because I didn't have the time for it,
You didn't
and
have the talent
I
for it,
didn't have the
okay?
time for it. The
Okay,
time for it, right?
okay.
And but then once I read up about G100, I thought it was very, very fascinating because I think it's Dr. Harbeen's vision that really, really inspires me because there is amazing leverage. I mean, I don't use it as a negative word, but I use it as a very positive word if we can all come together. Okay. I mean, literally, like, there's this, I mean, in physics, you say, if you have the right leverage, you can move the mountain. I mean,
Mountain, exactly.
right. It's a physics term. For me, also the same way. So G100 to me is that leverage, not the financial leverage or not the social leverage, but the physics leverage to be able to create a change in the world. So I'm kind greatly inspired, and then I look at the kind of members that are there. These are women who are doing fantastic work, and I'm hoping that there's a lot of work that happens with G100 in terms of bringing out ideas and projects which is going to make the world a much better place.
Yeah, and dynamic. I think there's a lot of dynamic change that is occurring right now all over the world. And I think G100 is doing phenomenally well with helping promote that. I call it a movement because it literally moves the different dimensions and different ways of how people actually show up. Cool. But when I'm asking you about oneness and wisdom, what exactly in oneness and wisdom did you feel that you could relate to?
I think the whole idea, I think, in one of our conversations you and I had, I think that whole idea that, oneness and wisdom is the part that unites the diversity of us. Because G100 has 100 different wings.
Mm.
Many times one wing doesn't know what the other wing is doing. And your vision to, be that wing which helps unite all the other wings. I think that's the one that's really, really exciting for me.
I mean,
Uh,
that was the most fascinating thing when I came on board. I remember I said, we've got such amazing women worldwide, and it's about time. And I think that was the first project that we did, is our diversity unites us. So
it's
yes, I think it may seem impossible for people, but I truly believe that if we all actually did come together, we'd actually really shift and do things that are going to be fun. So what's your take on fun, Nuthan? Do you have fun with what you do?
Of course, I think I'm really really lucky that way to
Mm,
have found. Well, to be honest, I mean, I was lucky to have found brand consulting because that was something that I liked a lot. I
mm.
still miss it, but then I am even more lucky because I found something that I just love doing. So what I do, I think I can just go on and on forever. So I think I'm really really lucky, and even meeting others who have fun doing what they do, I think that's
Mm,
important.
very
And
necessary. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it?
yeah,
Literally. I keep saying that to everybody. If you're not having fun with what you're doing, please don't force yourself. Find out what actually brings you joy and then employ that into your daily life because that's what is actually fun.
true. And I think now it's much more possible also to be able to do that.
True.
So, for instance, again, in a recent interaction, I mean, it was my first paragliding experience, and the instructor was so excited and enthusiastic, and it was infectious. And I'm like, pretty sure that, maybe by the end of the year, I'm going to go ahead and learn with him because and he just loves what he was doing. And I asked him, is this what you've been doing all your life? And he's like, no, I had other jobs as well, but then I found this and I can't imagine a life without it. And every time he does a gliding, I don't know, a jump off, it's amazing
Phenomenal.
for him. It's the same thing, I think, for me. I mean, every new project is so fascinating. And maybe a year later, that's when you really see what's the results. It's even more fascinating because then you have mathematical proof that yes, it has worked.
Okay, cool. So I usually love to ask my guest as to what do you think needs changing in the world and what can we be and do differently? In fact, I'm asking you the first time this question. Usually I ask for the golden nuggets, but I'd like to ask you, what do you feel that we can be and do differently that will actually shift
Hmm.
how this world is actually operating to come into more oneness? What do you think
Hmm.
would be required?
Okay, tough one, but I think this takes us back to the beginning of our conversation. I believe in resilience. Of late, when I look at maybe media, look at social media, I see that there is unfortunately the victimhood that is being promoted even more. Somehow that takes away the power. So I think for each one of us to reconnect with our resilience, to believe that, I mean, we've survived 50,000, 100,000 years, okay, as a species, and that's commendable with the body that we have to be able to do that. It's commendable. So I really think if we can connect back to it. Yes, we've gone through so much of trauma. I mean, I work with communities that have been traumatized to like really bad situation. But if we can really believe in our resilience, and if all the conversation starts shifting into resilience and
Resilience
claiming
as
back that
opposed to
resilience,
victim. I can't
yes,
agree with you more seriously because I do see that. And I'm glad that others are seeing it too, because if you can actually see it with your data points and the mathematical stuff that you do, I think it is really, really advisable now that if we were to actually shift and change how we are looking at things, how we are approaching things, not from a space of victimhood, but actually what you've said from a place of resilience, then it becomes more empowering, don't you think? You're giving tools, you're giving ways of how it is that you can come out of it, as opposed to saying, oh my God, now you're a victim, but let me empower you. It doesn't really work because you're still operating, the operating system still is victimhood. So bringing people out of that and helping them to see the world from a different perspective of who we are and what we've been able to achieve this far, and how it is that they could actually choose to operate from a space of power as opposed to,
yes.
being a victim. I think that it's a brilliant way of looking at it. So that's cool. So now, usually, what happens is that you're very right when you say there's too much of propagation of victimhood. My question to you would be, do you think people choose victimhood or the operating system as victimhood because it's serving them?
I think it's more because um, there isn't
Because,
much awareness in terms of building resilience. Again, see, this is where media comes to play. I mean, a victimhood story has much more takers than
yes,
a resilience story.
absolutely. I can't agree with you more. No, what I'm saying is sometimes, Nuthan, because I've worked with many people who choose to be in victimhood because it actually serves them, because then people are noticing them, people are giving them things, people are giving
Yes.
them money, people are supporting them, and it's actually working to their advantage being the victim. So you have many cases. I mean, I've had so many people who have shared their stories as to uh, people in different parts of the world who have been in situations where they are choosing to work, be the ladies of the night, for example. And when they've been taken out of that and put into a program that really will help them and facilitate them to become independent and to have a life of their own, they've been there for a couple of days and then they say, this is too much hard work. And they choose to go back to what they were doing. So, there
Yes.
are situations and there are situations. But it's things like this, that need to really be spoken about so
Mm.
people can really become aware. Because I've had so many stories around these things where people have chosen to go back to their way of operating because the ladies would say, well, we make more money in one
Exactly.
night than what you're making me work so hard, making me get up so early in the morning. And,
So in that example, I may not resonate much with you because I've done a study on sex workers and self-esteem. This was a project many years ago. But the fact was, yes, most of the people who get into sex work with their consent is there for the financial gains. And if I mean at that point, I mean the study during the study that I was doing, I was working with, I was studying rural non-brothel based sex workers. Most of them were earning more than me, and here I was with an MBA from a good college and all that, and they were earning more than me, and there's no way I could tell them that okay, go sell vegetables now. So yes, if it is an economic condition, yes, it is difficult to say that. But then that being said, yes, to the point where you say resilience is a lot of hard work,
Mhm.
because many times it is easier to, you know, I myself have done it. To wallow in the pain because that's easier than to get up and build on yourself.
It's true.
But then it's much more rewarding at the end of the
Mhm.
day.
So
Uh,
maybe since we're coming to almost the end, I'd like you to share with us what do you see as certain forms of us stepping into being more resilient, uh, to be able to cope with stress, financial distress, cultural so-called norms that are really not allowing us to show up as in our brilliance. What would you suggest as some of the areas that could be helping us to be more resilient in pursuing that path instead of falling back into an area that does not constitute serving as anything, literally?
uh,
No,
t-
just one or two suggestions, because I could talk about this topic for a very long time, and I'm probably going to get you on a call to actually do that because, but just to give a taste of what that might be in your opinion, to help people to overcome, uh,
One being, I
not,
think, the
not to
education.
slip back, not to slip back into what they were, but to pursue resilience as a way forward, as a way to open up the pathways of different possibilities.
I think, despite all the work that has been done, there is still lack of awareness of, how our body relaxes or how our body becomes resilient. So whoever the person is, I think, go back to the basics. You are biology, first of all. Okay. How does your body relax? How does your body become resilient? Learn it and practice it. And it's always like taking a bath, in the sense every day you do get dirty, you need to take a bath. Some days you need to take multiple baths. It's not enough that you say that I took a bath last week. Okay.
Exactly.
So if you're practicing anything, whether it's mindfulness, breath work, yoga, whatever it is, to help your physiology, your biology to, decompress, you will need to do it often. And if you already have had a history of maybe stress related problems, then it's much more necessary for you to continue even long after the symptoms are gone. So this is one part. The second is, I think, reflection. Like journaling or any other technique that you would follow to figure out what actually increases your energy, what takes it away. Knowing your boundaries, who are you in respect with the society, the social groups, and who are you as, in respect with your family, in respect with yourself, and what are those boundaries and how do you draw them? So it kind of, goes into various levels that way. So primarily start physical. Second is go into your, self-reflection, understand what brings you purpose, etc. And the third is, I think, yes, join G100.
Yeah, come on board so that we can facilitate
Yes.
and shift and change different things. But what do you think about the mind being the most uh, responsible for what it is that we might be experiencing, to reject resilience and to carry on being, sluggish, or not wanting to show up, or giving up on ourselves? How important? What is your take on the work of the mind?
Oh, that's
That's
actually
a
the crux of it.
huge, the crux
Yes,
of the whole thing.
because
Yeah,
what is preventing the mind from stepping up for
exactly.
you? Because that could be trauma, that could be transgenerational trauma, that could be complex trauma, which is kind of telling you your life doesn't matter, you don't really need to. And then to that person, if you make it comfortable, convenient not to step up, then that life is going to be
It's going to be
sad.
a repetition.
Sad.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
It's actually
And
going to
that's where
be
that
on
victimhood that you've been speaking about comes in. So then it's
to
very difficult
maintain.
for.
It's almost like I have to maintain this way of being because this is what happened to me. No,
Hmm.
nothing happened to you. It was a couple of choices that you made that actually came up in the way
Hmm.
that your life is showing up. Because we're the creators of our reality. What do you think about something like that? Do we create our reality?
Hmm. Tough questions. Um, how we experience the reality right now is dependent on what you experienced last week, what you experienced a month before, what your mother
Accumulate.
experienced.
Yeah,
It is
exactly. It's
accumulated.
cumulative.
But what you experience tomorrow is your decision.
Exactly. It's a
So,
choice that you've got
yes.
to make. Exactly.
Here I get a bit controversial
Yes,
because
yes,
more
yes.
than traditional therapy, I always try to look at, where do you want to go? And if that pull is strong enough, it doesn't matter how terrible the trauma was, you will find a way to get there.
Yeah.
But if you look at what caused your trauma, especially, in India, 50% of children have been sexually abused, and 80% of that is with family. So there is, it's a huge, huge number. But if I keep looking at that, there's no way to get out. Instead,
Exactly.
I think the focus should be, okay, I want to do something, whether it's climbing Mont Blanc next year or whatever it be, being able to pursue that. So that decision of where I want to be in future, that's completely up to us.
Yep.
How difficult it is depends on what is our past. But I guess this is where yoga is beautiful. It says no matter where you are, if you have decided, you will find a way, you will create the way to get there.
Cool. On that happy note, a couple of wisdom tools that you can share with everyone with regard to life, with regard to happiness. So about life, about happiness, how what would we actually need to be and do differently in our life to become happier? Since you're my happiness baby.
I think I will not use any of my wisdom because that is still work in progress, but I'll go with the sutra Om Mani Padme Hum. It's the Lotus Sutra, and I'm not religious, but this is a sutra that's been with me even during my atheistic phase. Om actually is, the three sounds, the past, the present, and the future are Oma. Money is a jewel, something
Mm,
that takes away a deficiency. So
mm,
suppose there is poverty, physical, mental, or economic poverty. Can I be that jewel?
mm.
Okay, so money, Padma is lotus with all the pain, the mud, the muck that we go through. Can I still become the lotus that, blossoms into the sky? Om Mani Padme Hum. Hum is a beautiful word. Your wisdom will lead you to your path, and your path will lead you further to your wisdom. Your path and my path may never be aligned, but trust in the universe, it's taking us there.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Is that Buddhist? Is it a, yeah?
Yes.
I remember my cousin sister sharing that with me because she follows that. And it was the time when my daughter was going to have open heart surgery. And it was about, bringing everything into uniformity, into helping people to be resilient and to be able to go into the space where everything was calm, cool, and collected, and hoping for everything to be perfectly all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we were having a chat with our phenomenal Netherlands country chair, Nuthan Manohar, who has shared her words of wisdom, even if she doesn't want to agree that she has got words of wisdom, because everyone is so unique and different. I get to learn from these amazing people every day. I get to speak to amazing women every month to get to know what they do. And we all are work in progress. And thank you for bringing that up, Nuthan. But it is more about who we were yesterday has no consequence on what it is that we can choose to be now and in the future. So, helping us to really get that in our conversation today. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us. And thank you. And hope to actually connect with you. And I hope everyone is going to connect with Nuthan to find out more of the brilliant work that she does. I know she's doing some amazing work for G100, Oneness and Wisdom, and I'm honored to have her as one of our country chairs. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Make me proud.